Welcome to the second MCFTECH Gantt Pro video. In this video, we're going to explore the different buttons and features that are available inside of the Gantt. We're going to go ahead and start with our top bar, starting with export. So when you click the export button here, it's going to export everything that you see on the left-hand side here in our table version of the data and move that into Microsoft Excel. So all the columns that I had present are available here. We can see that I have my sequence number, my WBS, my task name, which is going to include my indentations for subtasks, my start date, duration, finish date, assigned resources. This includes the level of effort that was assigned to that particular resource, and then my percent done. So I'm going to X out of here and take us back into the Gantt, and you'll see that this corresponds with the different columns that we have available right now. So if I were to add more columns or remove them, that would affect what gets exported into Microsoft Excel. The next button we have here is our show baseline and our set baseline. So what's important to note is when we click set baseline, you have available 3 baselines that you can set for any particular project. I'm going to go ahead and I believe we already have one baseline, so I'm going to set my baseline 2. And I'm going to go here in features just to make sure that we're showing our baselines. You'll see, when you're showing baselines because the tasks get thinner to make room for the different baselines. Once I come over here into show baseline, just like I can set baselines 1, 2, and 3, I can look at either one of these or all of them. So if I click baseline 1, this is going to show me what my original baselines were. And we can see here in the chart version that they were much further in October and earlier in the year than they are now. And then I can click on baseline 2, which are the baselines I just set, and they correspond with the current project plan. So as I move my tasks around, my baselines are going to stay static, and then I could set my third baseline, and then if we choose to show that as well, we can see how the project looked at different periods of time for that particular task. So I'm going to go in our features, and I'm going to deselect the show baselines and get us back to that project plan that's a little bit easier to read from a day-to-day basis that has the thicker taskbars. Anytime that you want to save back to Quickbase, you'd simply click the Save button here, and all of the data is going to go back to Quickbase. Because the Gantt sits on top of Quickbase, all of this data is actually read in when you launch the Gantt from Quickbase. It's manipulated here, so the names, the dates, everything, the resource assignments, anything that you change in the Gantt will get saved back into Quickbase, and then you'll have all of those native reportings and functionality that you have in Quickbase available to you. Clicking the X here is going to close the Gantt and check it back in. The standard version of the product, it allows for a check-in, check-out method for the Gantt. What that means is if one person has the Gantt checked out and they're manipulating it, then another user cannot also check out the Gantt and override any changes the first user is currently doing. So once you're ready, you can click X from here and close, and then it will allow another user to go into Quickbase if they have the appropriate permissions and launch this Gantt to edit it as well. This also includes if you're favoriting a particular project or Gantt. If it's already been checked out, you're going to see that message pop up available to you. We also have a full screen mode, so if I click this, for sharing or presentation purposes or even for printing the screen, a lot of times this is useful. It just gets rid of any header bars or anything else that you have on your screen. And lastly, up here on the button bar, we have our settings. So you'll see here that you can select different themes to review. One that I like to use a lot is called our classic dark version. It's a little bit easier to see for some people, where some people, they might like the Stockholm version, which is what we started on. We have some additionals as well, so you can select from material, for example. So they all have a little bit of a different look and feel, and these are basically determined by the user who is in the particular project. So when they save this project, the theme will actually get saved as well. I'm going to go head back to our Stockholm. I think it's a little bit easier to see as we go through this demo. And the next thing I want to do is go through our second button bar here in Feature List. So you'll see here the Create button. There's a couple of different ways to create a new task in the Gantt. You can click Create up here on the left, and it's going to automatically give me a task here at the bottom. So let's go ahead and call this, close out. And then it's automatically populating to what my original project start date was. So we're going to go ahead and move it to November, and let's say, actually let's do December. We'll do December 9th. And I can go ahead and let's go ahead and make this dependent on our UAT. And then I can go in here and update the duration as well. So I can do it with little arrows here, or I can actually click in and just type in a value, and you can see it get affected there. If I do a 0-day duration, it's going to give me a milestone, and that's represented by this little diamond here on the chart. All right, you can also right-click on any task, and you can follow the Add submenu. So you can add a task above or below the one you're on. You can add a milestone task, which we just went through on the closeout, or you can add a subtask or even a dependency from here. And we'll go through that a little bit in more detail on the next video. So if I'm set on, if I have a particular task highlighted, I can click this edit button here, or also I can right-click and edit the task. But if I click edit, it's going to open up my task card. The same as what if I right-click and click edit task. We do have an undo and a redo button. So if I click undo, you'll see here that that duration for the closeout changed from a 0-day duration back to the 20-day duration. And then if I want to redo that change, it'll be affected here. We also have the ability to expand and collapse all of our tasks down here below. So you can see here we can collapse all or expand all, and that will just determine which tasks show. For these here, for these 5 buttons in this section, they're all more relevant to the graphical version of the Gantt. So if I drag this over with a single click, I can do a zoom in, and it's going to zoom in, and you can see the days as well get affected. So now I can see for the weekly view, and I can go in a little bit further and see the daily and even up to times. Conversely, I can go ahead and zoom out, and it's going to kind of set me back through that process. I can also do a zoom to fit, which is going to give me the entire project plan on the screen, and I can go left and right, and it will move the project plan left and right accordingly. The next items we have here is a feature list. So we'll go through these and what they mean as for the Gantt and the user experience. So if I deselect draw dependencies, that means that I can no longer see the dependencies on the graphical version. So if you don't want to see it, you simply toggle that on and off. And the same with the task labels. You can see here on the graphical version of the Gantt that my labels disappeared and then reappear. Project lines as well. Let me zoom a little bit further so you can see it. So for example, the project end date here is showing, and then our project start date as well. So if you don't want to see those, you can simply toggle on and off. We also have highlight non-working time. At this point, I think in this example, we don't have any non-working time, so it's not going to show, but essentially it will give you those gray bars for any non-working time. Enabling cell editing, if you have this toggled off, and I were to click back here on the left-hand side, I'm actually not able to click in and edit any of these values. You'll see here on the right-hand side, I can still do it, but it's just going to close it off for the actual cells on the left-hand side. Show baselines, we went through a bit on the other video, but if I click show baselines, it's going to minimize the width of my taskbars and allow me to see any of the baselines that we have previously set, which you can toggle on and off through the show baseline menu here. We also have show rollups, but as we toggle on and off these rollups, you can see here that it's showing me that the project is extending all the way from the first task to the last task. And for example, my development is giving me from this Word Fusion installation all the way to this native Quickbase development. So as I click that, it's going to simply kind of come in and out and show me additional information. So for the show progress line, if I click that, it's going to basically take me from this here and show me as like an arrow where we're at for each particular project. So these top 3 options here for the project, the kickoff meeting, and the design and architect, they all have a % complete. And so we can see that this is highlighting those, whereas everything below has not yet been started, which is why they do not have these red lines appearing. We also have an option to show the timeline. So if I click on this, it's actually going to show me the project timeline up above in a bigger bar. And if I add a new column here called show in timeline, this is going to allow me to toggle on and off what I want to see up above. So maybe there are just particular tasks that I'm interested in seeing on the timeline as a whole. So I could, let's say that we don't want to see design and architect or development, but we do want to see QAT, UAT, and MCF kickoff meeting. So that's going to show me on kind of a really quick bar, all collapsed together, what I would normally see over here on the right. On the next item we have here is a show time range grid. This allows you to set events that are outside of your project plan that you may want to see as they overlap with what your task and project plan look like. So for example, let's say that we have end of fiscal year billing, and we know that it's going to be, let's say that it's December 4th, and it's going to be 5 days. And then over here on the Gantt side, I'm just going to expand our graph so we can see it. You can see here that we have our end of fiscal year billing, and it's represented here and gives you essentially a highlighted section. So I can see that it overlaps with my kickoff meeting and the beginning of my design and architecture and WordFusion installation. So any of these items here, the grid, the graphical representation, our time range grid, you can drag these around as well to get the view that you're looking for, as well as turning, for example, the time range grid all the way off. You can also click Hide Schedule, which again does the similar thing. So over here is where the graphical side is represented. You can either bring it back by clicking this, or if I were to go here and then click the arrow itself. So you can see here that we have 2 little arrows, and that's essentially hiding and expanding each of my sections. For our settings, this allows you to set how the UI itself interacts. So you can set the row height. So you can see here I can make it really big or I can make it really small. It's kind of more of a user preference. I can also set my bar margin to make this thicker or thinner, just like we did with the row height. And then I can affect my animation as well. So if I want to see it move really slowly so I can see what's happening, and then I drag my task, you can see here that the animation was a lot slower than it was originally. So if I move this back to the left and I go left, it moves and is a little bit more snappier. We went through critical path previously, but this essentially will highlight all of the tasks that belong in your critical path. You can also see up here what you want to define as your project start. So let's go ahead and say we want to move this into December. You want to define that as your project start date. You can do that, and then if we add a new task, it's going to automatically set this value to whatever you insert here into this project start. So now it's going to be December 4th. I can also find tasks by a particular name. So let's say I have a really long project plan. This one's relatively small, and I want to see anything with UAT. So it's going to basically filter my task list on both the grid view and on the graphical side to show me those particular tasks.